Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I am not Tammy Morse. I'm Claire Galliano. I'm speaking because Tammy lost her voice. So she doesn't have any responsibility. So, well, welcome to Early Music Minnesota. Before I announce this wonderful harpsichordist, also friend of mine, I'd like to remind you that the Early Music Minnesota now is going to coordinate the Twin Cities Early Music Festival. Some of the concerts is in your program, but Tammy let me know that the full schedule is going to be on Monday, Twin Cities Early Music Festival. Please come. She works very hard. It's going to be most of the concerts Sundance Hall, but all the information is going to be online. So it's my pleasure to introduce you Peter Sykes. Peter Sykes is a fabulous harpsichordist, organist. I've known him for more than 20 years. We teach together in the West Coast, in San Francisco, where we perform, and he's a fabulous also composer. And you are for a treat. So welcome, and thank you for being here, and please join me to welcome Peter Sykes.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a wonderful place to play the harpsichord. This is a wonderful harpsichord to play. And so I would like to start by saying that the idea for this program arose from the instrument itself, which is to say that this is a Franco-Flemish harpsichord. Harpsichords were made all over Europe, starting around 1400, we don't really know. But in 1580, a family of makers in Antwerp, Belgium, began a 100-year tradition of making what the world then and now considers to be some of the finest harpsichords ever made. This is the Ruckers family, 3 generations of builders in Antwerp, which is also the city of diamond cutting. So it was a very refined kind of place. The Ruckers harpsichords were exported all over the world when they were new. Frank Hubbard, one of the most scholarly of harpsichord builders, found one in the 60s in Peru that had been brought there when it was brand new. The Ruckers harpsichords were so famous, they were often forged, and that they were prized for many years after their manufacture, particularly in France, where they underwent very often a process of rebuilding and enlargement so that later music could be played on them. And so we're going to start with 4 pieces that represent this harpsichord before its rebuilding, and then the rest of it, 3 generations of the Couperin family. So we have 2 dynasties. We have the Ruckers harpsichord dynasty building and the Couperin harpsichord dynasty of composition and performance. The music that I'm going to play for the Flemish part represents this harpsichord in an earlier state, and music that has many different kind of dimensions, shall we say. We're going to start with the toccata by the most famous Amsterdam composer Jan Pieterszoon Sweelinck. Before the euro, the Dutch guilder had Rembrandt and Sweelinck on it for different denominations. That is the esteem in which he rightfully is held in his home country. Sweelinck was known as the maker of organists because so many Germans came to study the organ with him and then brought their art back to Germany, and there is a line that goes straight from Sweelinck all the way to Johann Sebastian Bach. The 2 pieces by Sweelinck that I'm going to play represent, first, an academic, or shall we say a very learned kind of piece. For the first half, it is full of ingenious counterpoint. The very second bar of the piece repeats the theme that you hear in the first bar, upside down. And then it keeps going back and forth like this with great amount of contrapuntal ingenuity. But at some point in the middle, it breaks off and just starts to make your fingers really wiggle. Sweelinck was a very he was a composer that was one of the first to realize what hands on a keyboard could do that was different than simply transcribing the notes of vocal music. And that the idea of making music, it was having to do with instrumental technique and the physiology of the body, is something that Sweelinck made as a great contribution. So we have the toccata at the beginning, and then this set of variations on Mein junges Leben hat ein Ende, my young life has an end. I'm amused to think that I programmed this piece for my master's recital 45 years ago. And now I get to play it again. It's one of the most beautiful and one of the most famous of Sweelinck's sets of variations, very much like the recorder variations of Jacob van Eyck. It really is like a counterpart to that. In the middle, we have two pieces that I probably could describe best as ear candy. These are pieces that are, in a way, things that are more, they have more of an appeal to the ear than to the mind. Echo pieces are very common in Sweelinck's works, and I could have played a piece by Sweelinck that fits this category, but I was not going to give up the opportunity to play a work by a composer named Scronx. The second piece in that ear candy category is a dance, a courant, by another Belgian composer, Pieter Cornet, which bears a lot of resemblance to the music in the Fitzwilliam Virginal book of English music of the same time. In that piece in particular, you'll hear a very light and brilliant sound of the stops that I'm using for the harpsichord that really represent what this instrument would have sounded like when it was new. And that when it was just a single manual small harpsichord instead of becoming a double manual larger harpsichord. And the fun fact here is that that Pieter Cornet courant bears the date 1624, which is the date that the original instrument of this was made. And so it's a piece that could not be more indigenous. So we're going to have a lot of Flemish music of different kinds, then we'll stop and I'll talk about the French music in the second half. And before each of the halves, let's have no applause until the end. So the first four pieces and then the end. Thank you. you very much. So now you've heard the instrument. What are the things that make the Flemish instruments so immediately revolutionary and so beautiful? And the answer is simple. The strings are longer. They are therefore tighter. They therefore sing for a longer amount of time. And so that kind of resonance allowed the harpsichord to really sing rather than simply speak. And that is something that really, really, really appealed to the French. Which is to say, I think we can all agree that for anything French, particularly cuisine or couture, ingredients matter. You really need to have the right butter, you have to have the right ingredients to make a beautiful outcome. And the sound of these Ruckers Flemish harpsichords really appealed to French makers. It's interesting to say they did not try to change the sound when they rebuilt these harpsichords. They only made them longer and larger so that they could have more notes, so that they could play more music. Otherwise, they were left alone. And that there are a lot I played recently a Ruckers harpsichord that only one half of the soundboard was original Ruckers. Everything else was new. But that was enough, apparently, to call it a Ruckers harpsichord, and it was a beautiful instrument. So in French music, in French harpsichord music in particular, the sonority of the instrument is always celebrated. It is an integral part of the experience of hearing this music. And that is nowhere more to be seen than in the piece I'm about to play next. It is what's called an unmeasured prelude, which is to say it's a piece in which there is no rhythm. There are only notes and slurs that sometimes imply which notes you're supposed to hold, and sometimes which notes are grouped together. But otherwise, it is up to the player to decide how to arrange the piece into a meaningful musical utterance. It was said that this kind of music allowed a player to quickly become familiar with an instrument that they were unfamiliar with. And when I was younger, I used to think, well, you find out, do all the keys work? What more do you need to know? And I didn't realize that it really was a test of the instrument's sonority. And that to be able to really taste the sound as one would taste the wine gives the player an opportunity to know how that instrument will respond to the music that is following it. It is also a very strong invitation to listening, to really listening to the sound of every note. How does that produce an aggregate of more sounds? How can you shape the sound through the way in which the tones live and die? Every harpsichord note has its own life. There is the pluck that begins it, then it blooms into a tone which hangs in the air for a while, longer on a Ruckers, and then it fades away into silence. Finding that shape and riding that wave of the sound is the way a harpsichordist plays with dynamics. The instrument does not respond to what I do. I have to respond to what the instrument does. And in that regard, we have to become world-class observers in order to be participants in the musical creation. There is nothing more important to learn how to play the harpsichord than to learn how to listen. And that for that reason, I never start a beginning harpsichord student with Bach. Because you can play the notes, it'll sound wonderful no matter how you play. We need something like this that will sound terrible. Really terrible, unless you're able to really open your ears. And so we have now 3 generations of Couperins. The first one, Louis Couperin, was a fine musician, a fine composer, harpsichordist, but not very well known because it was a period where there was less activity in the world about harpsichord playing. None of his music was published during his lifetime. In fact, not until much, much later. And these pieces come from a manuscript, interestingly enough, where the suites are not arranged as suites, But you get all the preludes, all the allemands, all the courants, and they're all in different keys, and you have to do the flower arranging of deciding which one is going to go with which. And so I have done so in order to find this thing. The last movement of this particular suite is an extraordinary elegy. It's a tombeau, which is to say it's an elegy of someone who has passed that was being honored by the composition of this piece. Blancrochet was a lutenist, and apparently he was well beloved. He did not leave us much music, but he died in an accident. He died at a party falling downstairs, and that the other people were there for this tragedy, and that 4 composers all wrote tombeaus for Blancrochet. This one is a very heartfelt piece, and there are 2 moments where I feel that one hears the tick of the clock of eternity going through it. The François Couperin piece is, in a way, lighter, shall we say. Every one of Couperin's pieces bear titles that are descriptions of people, places, things, events. Couperin said that he endeavored to make his pieces portraits of a particular idea, and that I would call this particular B-flat suite, of which I'm playing only about half of it, a Sunday in the country. That, of course, the people at this time really idealized country life, the unspoiledness of the people, the fresh air, that didn't smell like Paris. It was just a very nice place to be. And so the first piece, after I play a prelude which is akin to the prelude which began the Louis Couperin suite. So the first piece is called The Threshers, and you have this feeling of there being a big motion in the gavotte-like motion of this. It's a very evocative piece of people out in the field. The second one, Tender Languishings. To me, it evokes lying in a meadow, looking up at the sky and the clouds, and just sort of like enjoying the fact that you don't have to work tomorrow. The third piece is called The Warbling or the Twittering, and that it evokes birds. And that you'll hear there are a lot of ornaments, very quick motions. It is in rondo form, and usually in the third repeat, the third repain, something special happens. And in this one, the same thing, the same music goes on, but Couperin writes in the score, plaintively. And all of a sudden, we have a little love duet between 2 of the birds. And one of them says, "Don't you like me?" And the other says, "I'm not sure." And they go back and forth like this, and then it's all round come up. You'll hear a dialogue. There's a lot of opportunity to bring a lot of personality to music like this. The next piece is probably one of the most famous and iconic pieces of music ever written for the harpsichord. Those of you who have ever heard harpsichord music, when you hear that piece, you'll say, "I've heard that one before." It is a rondo. It is a piece called The Mysterious Walls. And it's a very mysterious title. I have my own private explanation for it, which is to say that when you were in the country, along the rolling hills, sometimes you see stone walls. And that, what are they for? Of course, they're to keep the sheep in or out. But someone from the city might not know that. And so that's my private image of these mysterious walls, and the piece does have kind of a rolling chord quality. The last one, Le Moucheron, can be variously translated as either the annoying fly or the annoying little boy. And this piece uses the ornaments that were commonly found in French music to a pictorial end, that there's one place where the left hand doesn't stop trilling. And it's like, get away from me! The idea of the buzz of the fly or the jumpiness of the boy. The last composer, Armand Louis, and I should say that Louis Couperin was François Couperin's uncle. François Couperin was Armand Louis Couperin's uncle. They were related in a family dynasty, and this family held the same church job for 150 years, Saint-Gervais in Paris. Armand Louis Couperin is now thought of as being part of the generation of decadent French harpsichord composers who perhaps were trying to make the harpsichord be as dynamic and relevant as the piano, which is now sort of an upstart insurgent into the harpsichord world. Some composers started to write music that really sounded like piano music, only you would play it on the harpsichord. That's not true in this case. This is real harpsichord music, especially the first one. It can, in a way, is no different, although one of the things that the French did when they rebuilt these Flemish harpsichords was to expand the bass register and to make the bass particularly strong and resonant. And so at one point in this piece, which is otherwise quite demure, I play a chord that is starting from almost the bottom note of the keyboard, which has 9 notes in it. I'm only not using one finger for this to play this huge chord, which is a very, very rich sonority. The last piece, The Joyful Person, is one that is perhaps, you might say, transcending the bounds of good taste. But I find it to be good fun.